fascists and communists are not that far from each other according to horseshoe theory. According to horseshoe theory. All right, those are the comments. Sent to the Moon asks, what is horseshoe theory? I'm not familiar with that. Horseshoe theory is the idea that both extremes are similar. If you look at a horseshoe, it's the whole idea that, this is the center. This is, I guess, your average liberal. And then on the right, you have conservative. And then here you have maybe like, sock dem or whatever. So they're very far from each other, right? But the more that you get extreme, like here would be like a communist. And the more you get extreme on the right, you get here a fascist. And then you realize that the fascist and the communist are kind of closer together than the sock dem and the conservative, because they share things in common, which are very, very dangerous. But horseshoe theory is absolutely ridiculous. In popular discourse, the horseshoe theory asserts that the far right and the far left, rather than being at opposite and opposing ends of a linear continuum of the political spectrum, closely resemble each other, analogous to the way the opposite ends of a horseshoe are close together. The problem here with this analogy, I'll be the most charitable as possible to the idea. The way I can be the most charitable as possible is to say that people who are usually on the far left and the far right, very, very often, because they're radical, they're radical because they're extremely unhappy with the way things are. So people who want to abolish capitalism on the far left are as unhappy with the world being what it is than people who want to abolish modernity on the far right, and liberties and equality and stuff like that. They want to abolish that because they're deeply unhappy with the way things are. So yeah, these two are very deeply unhappy with things are, and they want to change it radically. But that doesn't mean that they're the same, and that they share commonalities aside from being unhappy with what's in the center. To the person in the center, these two might be very, very alike, because there's a chance that the people in the center don't actually understand fully the criticism from the people on the far left and the people from the far right. All they understand is that they're unhappy with them. People on the center, do they actually really, really understand the criticism of modernity that fascists have to bring? Do they really, really understand the criticism of capitalism that the far left has to bring? No. To them, it's all pretty much the same. They want to, change things completely from what they want, and they hate me. So they're all the same. But I think horseshoe theory is a centrist take, completely. And it's one that, you see often in videos when I talk about communism, people saying, or when I talk about fascism, and people are like, so when are you going to talk about communism? Emil Nolde was a fascist. Dali was a fascist. I've made videos on both of them. And they're like, well, when are you going to make a video about how Frida Kahlo was a communist? When are you going to make a video about how 90% of artists from the 20th century are communists? And it's like, communists don't want to exterminate people. They don't want to take away liberties. They don't see minorities as a threat. The only minority they see as a threat is the minorities with concentrated power, which are, politicians and the bourgeoisie. But those are systemic minorities that come from that are systematically. There's a framework in which those minorities where they lie. It's not a minority in terms of their race or their gender or their ethnicity or their religion. There's actually a systemic structure behind the creation of that minority. So yeah, that's horseshoe theory. And anyone who believes that the right wing and the left wing are both equally terrible are the kind of people that are extremely sus, at least to me. They're people who either don't know what they're talking about or who believe that fighting against capitalism is just as bad as fighting against racial minorities. Really fucking weird if you believe that. If you genuinely understand both movements and you believe that fighting capitalism is the same as fighting racial minorities, you are extremely problematic. And that's why I think horseshoe theory is problematic. All right, let's continue reading comments.